what's happening to this earth and this country is so terrible that the most natural feeling would be one of utter despair. And the only way that you can deal with that really is to face it, to look at it, and to say, yes, we are full of fear, you know, and then to take action against it. And you're transformed by action. Your act of courage or whatever it is what gives you courage, nothing else. I think that's one of the reasons that women have been able to have been so important in all of this, and one of the reasons our particular actions have been is that we really aren't afraid to be afraid. I mean, it's no shame to us to be afraid, and we are, and we say, be afraid, you know, be terrified, for God's sakes, you know, and then take action against it.
I'm Judy Bowman, and I'm feeling really excited about doing this action. I feel a whole lot of energy being in Washington, D.C., and at the same time I feel a lot of sadness. And I'm really excited about going to the Pentagon. I'm feeling pretty clear about why I'm going. I'm going because I want to get a lot of energy from being with women who feel some hope for a different way of living, and I'm going because I feel ready to say, no, this has to stop.
There was a conference, and I guess it was in '79, called Women in Life on Earth, which was organized really out of Goddard and by a group of women. Out of that conference, to which about 600 people came when we were prepared for 300, people began to talk about doing a feminist, anti-militarist, pro-ecology action, so to speak. People just began to think about how to bring all of that together, what to do. Some women from Amherst and Hartford, and New York, and Vermont really began to meet and talk about this. And from one of the very early meetings, much of this was laid out in a way. They came together and they talked about the fact that they felt tremendous urgency to take on some sort of action at the Pentagon, that it had to be qualitatively different, and they used those words, that it had to be a woman's action, and that as it developed, it turned out that what we all meant was we didn't want to have a demonstration in which some guy up there talked and everybody stood there like this listening. So, you know, looking up either in sun or rain or whatever. And that's exactly what happened. What happened is we decided on a totally non-hierarchical action in which everybody would take part, and in which we, all of us, were the action, and we, all of us, were the theater.
No more war! No more war! No more war!
I have 4 children and 2 grandchildren, and my conscience would not let me sleep unless I put my body where my heart was, which is against this almost probably the worst demonstration in the history of mankind of military power. And that, oddly enough, you become that which you hate. That in order to have peace, we've become the strongest military power in the history of mankind. And that to argue rationally with something that's so irrational doesn't make sense any longer. That to say that we're going to have peace in the world and build it on fear and mistrust are all the worst qualities that the human being can live with. And that we must, as women in this whole world, make an appeal to say, we're going to trust, and we're going to have healing, and we're going to turn things around and live with hope and not despair, and have quiet, you know, a breathing of the earth and the breathing of love and not hostility.
We're not only speaking to the Pentagon, we're really speaking to women everywhere. We're really saying, women, you can move together, you can create your own kind of a movement and your own action, you know, your own face, so to speak, to each other and to the Pentagon.
We really wanted to do something that was, as I say, qualitatively different, and we wanted to think in terms of our own women's phases, rituals, songs, and we did. That's what we did. The action was divided into phases, which we even thought of as phases of the moon. The phases were one of, first of mourning. We ourselves mourned and paid respect as we walked through Arlington Cemetery to the male dead of wars. And then we came before the Pentagon and said, you're responsible also for all of these deaths. You know, from this central place of power, money, weapons, and death has come all of these deaths. And so we mourned for the disappeared women of Argentina at the time, and Guatemala, Adelida, Fopa. We're thinking of women raped and killed in the streets, and people made stones, made tombstones, but they didn't really they were cardboard. People, when you went among them and you looked at them, some of them said, my mother, you know, but the one that was most impressive to me, I must tell you about, is a woman came up to me and said, I've lost my tombstone. So I sort of smiled and I said, well, I'll help you find it. And she said, no, I have to put it in. I said, someone else will put it in. She said, no, I have to put it in myself. So I said, well, what did it say? I'll look for it. So she said, I came from California to do this. She said, and then she's quiet a minute and she said, it said, for the 3 Vietnamese women my son killed.
Has been for years and years, the men will protect the women and children, and women and children are saying, this is ridiculous, this is not making us more secure, this is not protecting us, and this is not what we want.
We are angry! We are angry! We are angry! We are angry! We are angry!
We are extremely angry that this is happening in our culture, that there's so much waste, that there's so much devastation, and that there's so much violence, because we know that we can have a better culture than that.
No more war! 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 No more war!
And here we are, supposing we're the only one in the universe, just supposing we're the only one in the universe. What a tremendous responsibility each of us has to protect this, because it might be the only, we don't know for sure. We can say there are millions of solar systems and that there are other living beings somewhere out in the universe, but we don't know for sure. And in which case, then we have to work very hard to save it, because we're so unique and it's such a wonderful thing to have this earth with people on it, all different colors living together. And we just can't let it go. We just can't let it disappear, as it can happen if we don't do something. And I used to think, you know, before that we were just like a grain of sand. Each of us were like a grain of sand, and we didn't have to be responsible, but I don't believe that anymore. Just in case we're the only thinking beings that are living on, you know, in the universe, and we just can't let it happen, just to let it bombed out, just nothing left. And I think people should think in this way, and if they did, then they would take full responsibility for all of their acts.
And then after that, they followed the birds and surrounded the entire Pentagon, and that was empowerment. We were able, in our numbers, to surround the Pentagon and felt empowered by that. And also we braided rags, which we brought. Everybody brought rags.
And it was very powerful for me the first year doing it with hands, because we move energy through our bodies.
Yeah.
Yes, we did it with our hands. We held hands around the building the first year. And it was amazing to feel this energy just running around this building in this beautiful circle. Because circles have been the image we use a lot in the Pentagon action, the cycles of the moon, the circles of women. And so there was this enormous circle. And the second year, I thought I'd miss it with the weaving of the cord around the Pentagon. But that rag cord had a lot of images for me while I was right there. I thought of an umbilical cord and all of its veins and arteries that come together, because these cords were ribbons and rags and wool and all of these things just in this big round cord. So it reminded me of the umbilical cord, and I thought about midwives bringing to birth a new culture. And I thought about fire escapes. I thought about how when you're trying to get out of a building, you make something to escape from. And so women were constructing this thing that allows us to escape from the reality of what the Pentagon is building, not in an escapist, shut-it-out kind of way, but so that we can find the new path into a better way, midwifing us into a new culture.
We say this is women have done this, women have woven, have made much of their art out of whole cloth, so to speak, or out of tatters, and have made much of their work, much of women's artwork is made out of stuff that it lives and dies and is biodegradable, if I can put it that way. I mean, you know, they haven't gone out a lot and packed up a lot of ground.
I think of the defiance stage not only as civil disobedience, although a lot of people identify it as that, and defying the law is a very clear way of defying militarism. But for other women who chose not to do civil disobedience, there was defiance there anyway. There's the defiance of speaking out. We've been taught as women not to speak out, not to let our voices get loud. And a lot of women came with strong, strong feelings. And they spoke out. They approached people who were leaving the Pentagon, and they said exactly what they needed to say to those people. And overcoming their fear and being very clear in their statement, they were doing an incredibly beautiful, nonviolent, defiant act.
You know, people use the word effectiveness. I don't know what's effective. You know, effective. What? Obvious. You can say that nobody's effective, and you can say that we all. And we know the world is getting worse and worse. So how can you say anybody's effective? But you can say that the people in the world seem to be getting better and better.
There's a defiance, too, to just participating in that action, because there's a lot of conditioning that women get not to be together. And so just coming together in a symbolic action of women is a defiant act in and of itself. And for some women, that's as far as they could take it. And that's fine. It made the action very powerful.
We will raise sure as the wind, my sisters, and sure as the rain, my sisters, and sure as the rain does shine, we will raise. Sure as the sun does shine, we will raise. Sure as the wind, my sisters, and sure as the rain, my sisters, and sure as the rain.
Images are so powerful to the way that our minds work. We don't only learn things by logic, we learn things also in a more synthetic way. It's the way that dreams affect us.
Sure as the rain, my sisters, and sure as the sun.
When we mentioned this million or almost million people in New York, every action leads to that. The only thing that is not effective is no action.
Sure as the rain, my sisters, and sure as the rain.
And in the sense that the Pentagon action was seen and understood by others, it was also an educational experience. I mean, we don't have to go to Washington. We might think next of doing an encampment at Seneca Falls, or we might all of the women of the Northeast might go there. Nobody says Washington is the only place.
Shine, we will raise. Sure as the sun does shine, we will raise our songs again.
Well, the question is really, do we have enough time, right? That's the question we all ask ourselves. Do we have enough time? Well, you have to live like a human being in the time that you have, and you have to share that humanity and increase it wherever you live and act.
The people who were left said, "It's not time for us to die.